Welcome to this deep dive. We're looking north today, across the border,
Hmm.
because there's been a potentially really transformative moment. Mark Carney is now Canada's Prime Minister.
Yes, that's right. A significant development.
Absolutely. And this isn't just, a standard changing of the guard. It could genuinely reshape that vital U.S.-Canada relationship.
It really could. The ties are so deep already.
Exactly. So today, we're going to zero in on what his leadership might mean. We'll look at trade. Tariffs, always a hot topic.
Always.
And we'll even touch on that perennial, though pretty unlikely, idea of Canada becoming the 51st state.
Ah, yes, that old chestnut.
Right. So our mission, really, is to unpack how Carney's specific background, his extensive experience, might just recalibrate things between the two countries.
It is quite a background. Heading both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. It's unusual.
It really is. That global finance perspective is key, isn't it?
Definitely. It gives them a unique lens. So yeah, we'll analyze the potential shifts his leadership might bring to this crucial relationship.
Okay, let's jump right into trade then. It's always sort of front and center.
The absolute pillar.
The USMCA is the framework now, naturally, but some of our sources suggest Carney has ambitions for Canada to, well, broaden its economic horizons.
Yes. Diversification seems to be a key word.
What does that really mean for the U.S., practically speaking?
Well, what's notable, I think, is the potential for a more, let's say, assertive Canadian trade strategy.
Assertive how?
Diversification isn't just talk. It suggests a real push to build stronger commercial ties with countries other than the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Like who? Are there examples?
Well, one report mentioned Carney highlighting, for instance, South Korea's tech sector as a place for more trade.
Interesting.
So while the USMCA, it's not going anywhere, it's the cornerstone.
Right.
Canada, under Carney, might strategically try to lessen its dependence on the U.S. market, and that could subtly change the negotiating balance.
Okay, so we might see Canada actively chasing deals, say, in Southeast Asia, or maybe doubling down on ties with the EU.
Precisely. Strengthening those other connections.
Does that automatically spell trouble? I mean, tension with the U.S.? Or is it just Canada trying to build a sort of stronger foundation for itself?
Initially, I'd lean toward the latter. It's about boosting Canadian economic resilience.
Makes sense.
Carney's whole economic philosophy seems geared towards strengthening Canada's independence, its standing. Diversification fits right into that.
Okay.
But, and this is the key point,
Yeah.
if pursuing those other relationships leads to direct clashes with core U.S. interests,
Right.
or maybe if Canada wants changes to USMCA that the U.S. really doesn't like,
Mm-hmm.
then, yeah, you could definitely see friction. The threat of tariffs from either side, it's always lurking, isn't it?
It is. We've seen that movie before.
Exactly. So how Carney navigates those tricky waters, well, that's something we'll need to watch very closely.
Absolutely. Okay, staying with areas that could get complicated. Climate change, energy.
Big ones.
Carney has a really strong established position here, doesn't he? Big advocate for sustainable finance, carbon pricing.
Very much so. It's central to his thinking, it seems.
So how does that mesh or potentially clash with the U.S. approach?
That's a really critical question because, historically, the two countries haven't always been on the same page with climate policy.
Not at all.
On one hand, you could see a real opportunity here. Deeper collaboration on renewables? Maybe. Canada's commitment, likely stronger under Carney, could align with certain U.S. priorities. Maybe joint research, shared infrastructure.
Like what? Power lines?
Yeah, things like cross-border clean energy transmission. Those discussions could really pick up speed.
Okay, so that's the upside.
Yeah.
But where are the potential headwinds?
Well, clashes could definitely happen if U.S. climate policies start to diverge significantly from Canada's likely more ambitious targets.
Right. If the U.S. pulls back on things.
Exactly. Canada's probably going to push for strong, coordinated North American action. Any perceived weakening from the U.S. side could cause real tension.
And what about pipelines? That's always contentious.
Yes.
Oh.
We can't ignore those long-standing, often very heated debates around fossil fuel infrastructure,
Yeah.
pipelines, related energy projects. The two countries have often had very different views there.
Yeah, those debates have caused major friction before. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Security, foreign policy.
Okay.
Our sources remind us, obviously, NORAD, NATO, those are bedrock.
Absolutely fundamental.
But Carney also has this emphasis on multilateralism. Could that signal a shift in Canada's posture on the world stage? A bit more independence?
It's quite possible, yes.
Yeah.
A focus on multilateralism suggests Canada wanting to engage more actively maybe with more autonomy in global affairs.
Mhm.
You might see Canada forging stronger ties with a wider range of global partners.
So not pulling away from the U.S., but broadening its network.
Exactly. The U.S. security alliance will almost certainly stay paramount. Geography, shared interests dictate that.
Yeah.
But a more independent Canadian foreign policy might lead to, say, different priorities or different tactics on some international issues.
Oh,
It's not necessarily about weakening the U.S.-Canada security link,
yeah.
but maybe seeing it evolve as Canada carves out a more distinct role for itself globally.
Right, a stronger independent voice, but still a close ally.
Hmm.
Now, we have to touch on it. The idea that pops up now and then, even though everyone says it's incredibly unlikely,
Mm-hmm. The 51st state theory.
Canada as the 51st state.
Mm.
What actually fuels that, do you think, given how improbable it seems?
Well, what's interesting is why it keeps coming up,
Mhm.
right, despite the odds. It often stems from that really deep economic integration we talked about.
Yeah, the trade links.
And also, perceived shared cultural values, at least between parts of the populations.
Easy travel, shared media.
Exactly. The interwoven supply chains, all these things sometimes spark that hypothetical thought,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a formal political union.
But the reality on the ground, very different picture, isn't it?
Totally different. Our sources really hammer this home. Canadian national identity is strong,
Uh,
distinct,
Mm.
and the political structures, the realities in both countries just make that scenario extremely remote.
And Carney's focus seems to be the opposite, right? Strengthening Canada as Canada.
Precisely. His agenda, from everything we've seen, is about boosting Canada's strength and sovereignty as an independent nation, not pursuing any kind of merger.
Okay, so forget the 51st state. Let's talk about what some are calling the Carney effect,
Mhm.
the potential impact of having this very experienced global figure at the helm in Canada. What might that look like in practice dealing with the U.S.?
Well, the Carney effect idea suggests maybe a more sophisticated approach, more strategically calculated, perhaps.
Sounds so.
His deep grasp of international economics, his experience navigating, really complex global finance issues that could empower Canada, make it more assertive, maybe more adept at managing the details of this crucial partnership.
So a more data-driven approach,
Yeah.
more globally aware.
Potentially, yes. That kind of perspective shaping Canada's interactions with its southern neighbor.
It sounds like the basic closeness remains, but how Canada engages might become, well, more strategic, maybe less automatically aligned on every single thing.
That seems plausible. But, and our sources stress this too, a huge factor is always going to be the political climate in the U.S. at the time.
Ah, yes. That's absolutely critical, isn't it? It takes two to tango.
It really does. The dynamic is massively shaped by the political winds blowing from Washington. So Prime Minister Carney might bring this new strategic mindset to Ottawa, but the relationship's actual path heavily depends on U.S. policies and priorities.
So there will be tests, guaranteed.
No doubt. The interplay between these two forces, Carney's approach and the U.S. administration's stance, it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
But the initial signs, they suggest Carney's ready to navigate whatever comes with a clear eye on Canada's interests.
Okay, so wrapping this up, it feels like we're looking at a new chapter, potentially.
Thinks that way.
We can expect continuity, right?
Yeah.
Shed security, deep economic ties, those aren't going away.
Oh, those are fundamental.
But also the prospect of maybe evolving trade strategies, a stronger climate push from Canada, maybe a more independent foreign policy voice under Carney.
Exactly. You've got this leader with a really unique blend of experience and perspective stepping in. It adds new factors to this incredibly important relationship.
It's going to be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
It really will be.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. Given this incredibly long history, these deeply intertwined destinies of the U.S. and Canada, and now with this new leadership in Ottawa, what unexpected paths might this relationship take? As both countries try to navigate this, well, increasingly complex world, something to keep in mind. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.